Freaky Friday meets Single White Female gone all shades of wrong. This one might be of interest to you, and it might not. And at one point I thought, I'm just gonna DNF it, like it's not totally working for me. For the people out there, like for the people in the back who were like, this isn't plausible. So she wrote, which I haven't read yet, such a broken record here. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse, and welcome to part one of what I read in March. So I'm having a really good reading month, which makes me very, very excited, which is not to say February wasn't good, but I have jumped back into some 2024 releases. I've had some anticipated releases that I talked about in my March release video, and I'm just having a good time. So let's talk about it. The first book I want to talk about is A Step Past Darkness by Vera Kurian. So this came out in February, 22nd, I want to say it was. I had pre-ordered this, and this was one of those books where I was like, when it gets here, I want to read it when it gets here, which is basically what I did. So I am a big fan of hers. So her first book, Never Saw Me Coming, was absolutely one of my favorite books of 2020. Is that when she came out? This was definitely such a fun ride. Chloe, the psychopath study, fast-paced thriller. I'm telling you all of this, 2021, to say this is a very different book than this one, even though how great are these covers? Looking alike, look alike, look alike. But this book, and this is one of those things that I really enjoy about many authors that I read, is you don't get the same book twice. So this book is a much slower pace. She has 6 main characters who have POVs, which, as a writer who has multiple POVs, who's doing multiple timelines, which she has multiple timelines in this book, what she manages to achieve in this book is like mind-blowing to me. And she talked about, because of course I found all the interviews so I could listen to her talk about the book when it came out. She talked about what an undertaking this was. And I can only imagine from like a plotting, planning standpoint, how to keep all of these characters and all of these threads and all of this consistency going. And I think she did a fantastic job of doing it. So she describes this book as It meets the Goonies meets the Breakfast Club. So we have the dual timelines. So we have 1995. They are in between their junior and senior year in high school. And then we have 2015 as our present day. So a bulk of this book takes place in the 1995 timeline. It's like I knew I was going to get it wrong. So they are part of a group who is assigned these capstone projects, which are like extra credit special projects that students at this school did in the summer. And they are randomly assigned. So we get kind of a mixed bag of a group of friends. So it's a school where people know each other, but they are not all necessarily friends with each other, and they get thrown together. And something happens in the past that brings them together and ties them together. So we do find out what that thing is. And then in the present day, what we find out right out of the gate is that one of the people from their group has returned to their hometown where everyone else has sort of flown the coop after high school and has been found dead in a very suspicious way. So the theory from the group is that what they did in the past has come back to haunt them, and they are all forced to return home under the guise of kind of going for the funeral, but to find out what happened and kind of face what happened in the past. So I want to say the tagline on this was like a murder 20 years in the making or something like that. So yeah, 6 classmates, one real bad night, and a town with some real sinister stuff under the surface. So I have never read It by Stephen King, so I cannot speak to whether this, which this is her homage. She said that is her favorite Stephen King book. It is the reason why she became a writer. I cannot speak to the fact of this is that, but I know The Chalkman by C.J. Tudor was sort of her love story or her love letter to It, and I very much enjoyed that book. So I feel like I have a decent enough sense of what It is about to say I understand the dynamic of the group of friends coming together in the past and the present. So like I said, this is a very slow burn book, and I had read a review on it before it came out from someone who had an arc, who had said, like, if you're expecting Never Saw Me Coming Part 2, that's not what this is. So just be aware of that. And I was actually having a conversation with Kate from formerly Killing the Tea, now Book Wild. Same Kate, just rebranded the podcast. And she was talking about like when she knew she was going to have a busy week coming up, that she didn't want to have a slow burn book. And I definitely made the mistake of not taking that advice and having a very busy time and picking a slow burn book. So it took me a little bit to get through it, just in the sense that I did not have the physical time to sit down and read. And I really feel like this is a book that is best served when you can dedicate chunks of time to it, because you do keep moving chapter to chapter into different points of view. And there's a lot of characters to get to know. But we spend a lot of time with these characters up front, kind of before the thing in 1995, to get to know all of them. So I feel like it wasn't hard for me. Like, it's not that I couldn't remember who was who. You just have to get used to like having the multiple voices and all of the POV changes. So I ultimately enjoyed where this ended. I ultimately enjoyed where characters ended. There is, I think if you liked Midnight is the Darkest Hour, there is an element here you would enjoy. That's not the right word. I think if you enjoyed Midnight is the Darkest Hour, you will enjoy this, because there are, I would say, some similar themes that take place. Small town, small-minded townspeople. And there's just definitely a history to the town that has an impact that we learn about. So cryptic. And again, I don't totally know what it is about, so I'm not sure like what should or shouldn't be said about things. But the Breakfast Club vibe is sort of in that sense of like all of these people who would never be friends being forced together. And then the Goonies adventures. So there is a mine in this town where people go to party, and not great things always happen at the mine. So there you go. But I think if you're a fan of her writing, I think if you are interested in something which feels a little bit different to me. So it's, like I said, it's slow paced. It still has thriller elements to it. I very much enjoyed the pivot, because this does feel like a pivot to me from her first book. And I love seeing what else she could do. And she was talking about, so this is not a spoiler in any way, and she was talking about this. I watched an interview that she did with Alex Finley. I'll see if it's online. I saw it through a bookstore. So her and Alex Finley are both local to DC authors, and it was broadcast live the night of. But she was talking about how one of her characters, Gia, who starts to see visions that she can't explain, and Vera Kurian was saying, like, that's just accepted. Like, it's in the first page of the book. We see it right out of the gate. People know she has that ability, and people don't question it. It's just the truth of the story. So there's some elements and things happening here too. Anyway, that was a really long way of talking about this book to say I enjoyed it. I'm very excited to see what she comes up with next. It definitely was not wholly what I was expecting, but I kind of like being surprised also. So just go in knowing it's not going to be Never Saw Me Coming Part 2. I think that's important to know. So if you're expecting the same thing twice, and not even in terms of story, but just in terms of like the pace and the humor, like the dark humor of that book is not what's in this book. So anyway, props to her for doing it. And then we have something totally lighter. If you guys watched my vlog that I did, I was reading Meet the Benedettos by Katie Katungo. So I finished this, obviously, because I'm sitting here talking about it. And this was just fun. I would say take it for what it is. I started to like question a couple things where I was like, well, maybe if, or shouldn't we have said? And it's just like, no, just like a good TV show that you just need something a little bit different, a little bit of a palate cleanse, just light. There are some weighty topics in this, so it's not like totally light, but kind of breezy in some ways, a little inside Hollywood. It's about the dynamic between these five sisters. It is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, which I am not an expert on at all. And it also compares it to Meeting the Kardashians, Meet the Benedettos. The Kardashians meets Pride and Prejudice. And if you guys watched the vlog, you will know I'm also not like Team Kardashian, so that did not do anything for me. But I enjoyed the dynamic between these sisters. So we have five sisters. We have a dashing Hollywood actor, Chris Bingley, who moves into their neighborhood, and his friend Will Darcy. And we've got sort of a hate to love. We've got some challenges in the family. And I just had fun with it. So I would say take it for what it is. There's some really great humor to it. You can see I dog-eared it a whole bunch of times. There's a lot of really funny lines in here. And I definitely enjoyed the banter and the humor between the sisters, between Will and Lily. Lily Benedetto was like our main sister of the group. She's our main character. And I just had some fun with it. So family story, really about the sisterhood, and then a little bit of like some parties and tabloids and famous for being famous, and a family who had a TV show but has fallen a little bit out of the spotlight, but it was fun. Take it for what it is. It was a fun time. Okay, next up, I also talked about in my Life Lately video, I was listening to, and I need to refer to my notes, 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. So I kind of put a pin in this in February because I was also reading How to Live a Non-Anxious Life by John Deloney, and it just became like a little bit too much self-help for me. So I finished 4,000 Weeks in March. So it's definitely a book that you could dip in and out of, the beauty of self-help. And I will say with this book, I didn't totally connect to it. And at one point I thought, I'm just going to DNF it. Like, it's not totally working for me, but I was probably like 80% in, and I was like, well, just listen to the end because maybe there's a nugget. And there's an appendix at the end of the book, which is just like some key takeaways. And I swear that was my favorite part of the entire book. I totally was like listening to the audiobook. I had borrowed it from my library. I was this close to it having to go back, and I was like, I don't want to necessarily renew it because I didn't want to use up one of my borrows for the month, because you get limited borrows for books online. So I was like feverishly trying to finish it, but I was like pausing and trying to write stuff down and watching the clock at the same time because it was real close. It was real close. But I wound up enjoying, I feel like, the end of it. And kind of the overarching idea of 4,000 Weeks is that the average person lives for 4,000 weeks. What are you going to do with your life? How are you going to spend your time? What's really important to you? So there's some approaches that I didn't totally agree with about trying to prioritize things. And there were things I did agree with. You know, you can only do so many things at a time, and don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today, and kind of waiting for like someday, or one day, not really the way to live. And there were like some interesting nuggets along the way, but as a whole, I'm telling you, like those last 5 minutes was like the golden egg for me. So that's what I really enjoyed about it. And again, self-help, take it for what it is, kind of take the parts that you enjoy if you're interested in it. This was also a Bad on Paper podcast book for January. This was their book club pick for January, which is how it got pushed on my radar. But I want to say it's from like 2 years ago. So anyway, if you're looking for some time, life, rebooty kind of stuff, this one might be of interest to you. And it might not, but there you go. So I listened to it. And then another book that I listened to is Finley Donovan Rolls the Dice by El Casimano. So hold on. Angela Daw is our audiobook narrator of this. I was actually lucky enough to get this from Macmillan Audio. So I was very excited. I have read, well, I feel like it should go without saying I read the entire Finley series. This is book 4 in the Finley series, so I wouldn't necessarily just jump in with this one. And then last month I read Veronica Ruiz Breaks the Bank, which is like Finley 3.5. So I'm all caught up on the series, but I don't want to talk too much about, and I also don't want to talk too much about autocorrect. Come on. I don't want to talk too much about specific plot information because I don't want to give away anything from the first couple of books, but I am just such a fan of this book. To me, this like scratches a particular itch. There's some good humor to it. It's a balance between levity but a good mystery. We get the hijinks. We get kind of, I mean, they just get into, so it's Finley and her former nanny, Vero, and they get into all sorts of trouble and they work their way in and out of trouble. And it's a little bit wink, wink, nod, nod. I definitely feel like El Casimano threw a couple things into this book in particular. for the people out there, like for the people in the back who were like, this isn't plausible, this isn't this. And she definitely pokes some fun at herself, but it's like, in some ways, like the stereotypical, the hot cop, you know, like the crazy stuff that's going on, the bad ex-husband, the two children that get into all sorts of hijinks and stuff like that. In this book, we get more of her mother, who we've seen through all of the books. We get her sister, Georgia. And it's just, Finley and Vero get themselves into like the most precarious, ridiculous situations. And how they manage to get themselves out of it is, yes, not totally plausible, but it's so much fun to watch. So in this one, they do go to Atlantic City. Not going to tell you why. And they manage to just make a whole big mess of things. And for one reason or another, the whole crew winds up coming with them. So they're from Virginia. They wind up in Atlantic City. And it was just great fun. So the first book so Finley is a writer, romantic suspense. She is talking about the plot of her newest book at a Panera in the first book and gets mistaken for a hit woman. And Finley is recently divorced. She is desperate for money. She's not really trying to murder for hire or anything like that, but she winds up getting herself into something in book one and just continues to get into things over and over again. But we do get some resolution on some storylines in this book, and then I feel like the door is always open for more, so we'll see what happens next. But I had a very fun time with this. Vero is a fantastic character. Again, there's so much wit and humor and good banter to this. It's just fun. It's just fun. This is absolutely a TV show I would want to watch, and I'll be curious to see what happens next in this, but I had a great time with it. I'm super jazzed. Thank you again to Macmillan for getting me the audio or sending me the audiobook. Angela Daw does such a fantastic job. And I had talked about when I read Veronica Ruiz Breaks the Bank, and this was read by Stacey Gonzalez. And some people were like, oh, like we missed Angela Daw and how she does Vero and her voice and all of this. And I agree. Like, I think Stacey Gonzalez was great. Angela Daw is also absolutely fantastic, and it's great. So if you have not already started this series, I highly recommend it. And if you have not yet continued in it, it's just fun. It's just absolute fun. So my vote is to keep on reading. The next book I listened to is Dear Dolly by Dolly Alderton. So this is Dear Dolly on love, life, and friendship. And she has been writing a column since 2020, the year of, sharing her wisdom, warmth, and wit with countless people in her column in the Sunday Times style. So she wrote a book called Ghosts, which I bought and haven't read yet. And then she just had a book called Good Material come out, which I bought and haven't read yet. But this is a nonfiction book. So I was not in a position, so I own the physical copy of Ghosts and Good Material, and I was looking for another audiobook to listen to. So I wound up picking this one up because I just am super curious about it. And I had a really good time with this book too. So this is one of those books. So it's classified as self-help. It's letters that people have written in, and they range from everything to friendship issues, relationship issues, you know, self-help, feeling lost in life, you know, trying to make decisions about your future, decisions about money, decisions about children. And it kind of like runs the gamut. And I would say, if you're curious about it, give it a go. This is one of those books, kind of when I was talking about in February about Creating a Non-Anxious Life by John Deloney, where I had skipped through some stuff where he was talking about like helping your children cope with anxiety and things like that. When I was listening to this audiobook, which is like a 5-hour audiobook, so it's a very quick read, that I mostly listened to every question. So at first I was like, oh, that question doesn't apply to me. I'm not interested, like next, basically. And I was listening to one where the situation itself did not apply to me, but within her answer to how to approach a certain situation was one of those answers that could be applied to lots of situations. And I wound up finding some interesting takeaways from it. And I wound up listening kind of to the rest of the questions. So there's a real, I don't know if like tough love is the right word. She's very direct. There is some good humor to it, but she very much gets to the point. And it's a lot, you know, I think a lot of times, speaking personally, when you are asking people advice, or you are looking for self-help, or maybe you're Googling stuff online. It's like you're looking for the answer that's going to reinforce what you're already feeling, or what you already think you should do, or what you think, like, yeah, I feel like the should word is like the big one. And her book is not here to appease you. It's not here to hold your hand. Like, she definitely gives very honest feedback, which is sometimes the thing you don't want to hear, or the thing maybe you know is true, but you're not ready to do yet. Or maybe it's something you haven't even thought of yet. But the idea of having to do a certain thing because, or not do a certain thing because. And it talks about, I felt like as you get older and making life decisions and dealing with difficult friendships, or how friendships and relationships change as you grow older, as your lives change. Some people have kids, some people don't, how the dynamics are different. There were so many interesting takeaways to this, and there were a couple of things that she said that really hit, like, in a way that I was like gut punch kind of hit, where I'm like, oh, she's so right. She's so right. I don't want to admit that. But it was good. Like, it was just, again, I feel like it was kind of just what I needed in that moment, and I had a good time with it. So this obviously has nothing to do with her fiction books, but I'm excited to read her fiction books, and I've heard some great things about them. So it's definitely, there's not judgment in her answers. It's very, like I said, kind of no nonsense. There's a bit of good humor to it. There's a little bit of like snarky, sarcastic fun to it. And I just enjoyed her delivery, and I enjoyed her style. So she does have, I want to say she has another nonfiction book. Hold on, let me just double check. Yes, she has Everything I Know About, and it's parties, dates, friends, jobs, life, love. So I'm definitely going to keep reading more from her. And I will read her fiction books and let you guys know what I think about them. But that was just sort of a fun change of pace. And she says she has also written for GQ, read Marie Claire and Grazia. And she, from 2017 to 2020, co-hosted a weekly pop culture and current affairs podcast, The High Low, alongside journalist Pandora Sykes. So anyway, take that for what it is. But I enjoyed it, and I will continue to read more from her. And then the last book I want to talk about today is When I'm Her by Sarah Zakharich Yang. And this was gifted to me from Berkeley. I'm just like looking at the back of this. At the time I'm filming this actually hasn't come out yet, but by the time you guys see this, this will be out. And this was unexpected fun, I feel like. Like, it's definitely a dark, messed up thriller. A little bit, it's like Freaky Friday meets Single White Female gone all shades of wrong. And I really enjoyed it. So this was also one of my most anticipated, and I was very surprised to get a copy of it. So I was very excited, and I obviously moved it further up my list. Basically, I was like, I got it in the mail, and then I was going on my work trip, and I'm like, you know what I'm going to read on the airplane? This book. So it says, how far would you go to get even with the woman who ruined your life? So this is her second book. I have her first book called The Other Me, which I haven't read yet. Such a broken record here. But she writes kind of sci-fi-ish thrillers, I guess I would say. There's an element of, Alex Finley says, a Blake Crouch twist to it, if that gives you something. And then Eliza Jane Brazier calls it the STEMinist thriller. So it says, polar opposites Mary and Elizabeth are as close as can be. So they wind up meeting as roommates in college, fast friends. Again, total opposites. So Elizabeth is like one of the it girls. She's got the cool circle of friends. Mary's a little bit shy, super smart. Elizabeth kind of takes her under her wing, brings her along the way. And even though Mary has never quite fit in with the friend group, she's been a part of it. And then something happens one night in college, and it says Elizabeth makes an irrevocable mistake and leaves Mary to take the blame. Years later, Elizabeth seems to have forgotten Mary exists, but Mary hasn't forgotten her. So Elizabeth is now an influencer. She has a very public online lifestyle. She is married to someone that they know from college. And Mary, it says, they do say living well is the best revenge, or is it? So Mary's plan for revenge is she doesn't want to ruin Elizabeth's life. She wants to take her life. Her charmed life, her husband, her money, her everything. And she is going to do what they did in college, which is body swap, because that's something that they can do. So Freaky Friday, single white female, totally dark and messed up, very toxic female friendship. The things you will do. We get both timelines of college and now, trying to figure out what's happening. It did take me a couple of beats to like get my POVs because we've got the Freaky Friday situation happening here. But I really enjoyed this. And not that I thought I wouldn't, but I feel like I didn't know what to expect from this book. And it's definitely, I feel like you're a little bit off kilter. You're a little bit not quite sure what's happening all the time. There's just some, people just do terrible things to each other. But we keep getting different reveals, and it's one of those things where, like, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So just taking Elizabeth's life from her is not as easy as Mary assumed it was going to be, from the transition to the life that she is walking into. And I think it is definitely another reminder that we don't need, but here we go again. Like, social media is not real. What you see online is not real. It is not the full story. It is not everything. You're getting this much of a person. And, you know, just be careful what you wish for. So I had a good time with this. I really enjoyed the characters in here. There was one moment where I was like, I thought somebody was going to be let off the hook for something, and then it was totally redeemed. Like, I should have just given the author a couple more beats to get to it, because I was like, whoa, wait. And I kept reading and I was like, okay, there it is, there it is, there it is. So I had fun with this. It's a great revenge book. It is definitely a different twist on a revenge book from one that I have read. And now I'm really excited to read The Other Me. So stay tuned for that when it happens. No promises on when. And then she actually has a great list of books in the back of this about characters taking on new identities, so to speak. And there's a whole bunch of books in here that I've already read, which is exciting. So she's got Ripley, Freaky Friday. She's got Stranger with My Face by Lois Duncan, which is one of the first Lois Duncan books I ever read, and probably one of the most memorable in terms of like books that got me into enjoying mysteries. So she wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer, amongst a whole bunch of other things. She also has My Sweet Girl by Amanda Giatisa. And then she has Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, which I haven't read yet. She has Social Creature, which I talked about in February, and a few others that I'm excited to dive into. So that's just kind of fun. I love a reading guide at the back and some like insight from the author. And I just thought it was fun. So I would recommend it. So again, brand new release. If you haven't already checked it out, I would recommend you check it out. And there you have it. So that is the first half of what I read in March. The month is going well. Got a couple books going now. I finished a couple other ones that I'll tell you about later. And yeah, that's what's happening. So let me know. Have you read these? What are you guys reading? What are you doing? What's going on? What's happening? Tell me all the things. And I will see you back here in the next video. And thank you so much for watching this one. And if you come back, that's awesome. And if you're new here, welcome. And if you've made it this far, you guys rock. You know all the stuff. And I will talk to you guys really soon. I'm having a day. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.